In this video we are going to take a closer look at the heavy support battlefield role of a Deathwatch army and how to best include them in 9th edition. First we will look at which ones are showing up in competitive play, then we will discuss which ones might make a situational appearance, and finally we will go through the ones that are currently best left at the Watch Fortress past the Rule of Cool.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Tammer and I will be guiding you through this video.
When it comes to list building, the Deathwatch has the huge advantage of the kill teams counting as troops. As a result, the other battlefield roles tend to be less crowded when compared to the other Space Marine chapters. The commonly used battalion detachment allows up to 3 heavy support choices, while the patrol or even vanguard detachment allows up to 2 of them. So which ones are worth bringing along then? From a competitive perspective, we have seen the following picks in tournament lists over the recent months: Eradicator Squad, Eliminator Squad, Whirlwind, Sicaranarchus and even a Hellblaster Squad. Starting with the Eradicator Squad, the boogeyman of early 9th edition. These guys have certainly managed to antagonize a large portion of the community, at least the ones not playing Space Marines, and well before 9th edition Drukhari, AdMech and Orcs became a thing. Equipped with melta rifles, they are classic anti-tank and they have a special ability called Total Obliteration, which allows them to fire at the same target twice. At initially 40 points per model, they were just very undercosted compared to other units with a similar role, and even after their points increased to 45 points in the January FAQ, they are still a strong pick. I think what currently works a bit in their disfavor is that people have learned to work around them and that the current meta doesn't offer them ideal targets. In the Deathwatch, they can also be part of the Indomitor kill team, which was immensely hyped at the early stages of the supplement release, but has proven to be suboptimal due to total obliteration requiring the whole kill team to fire at the same target. With all that being said, they are still an excellent anti-tank choice for Deathwatch, especially because we cannot take Devastators or attack bike squads, and they infrequently find their way into competitive lists. In general, they are best used as an actual Eradicator squad and not as part of an Indomitor kill team and deployed through the Teleportarium stratagem. Moving on to the Eliminator Squad, which has been celebrating a comeback in 9th edition these past few months. I have done a whole video on these, covering all the different strategies. The link is in the description. In short, they have enjoyed a point cost reduction down to 25 with the default sniper loadout, and the last Facil only costs an extra 5. In addition to being a heavy support choice, they can also be taken as part of a Spectre's kill team. Both options are excellent and they appear frequently in tournament lists with either loadout. Don't sleep on these guys. Moving on to the next unit, the Whirlwind. While clearly a relic from older editions, one might wonder how this one made it back into competitive play. The answer is not directly linked to its data sheet, but rather to what turned out to be a Whirlwind exclusive stratagem in 9th edition, Suppression Fire. For 1 CP, if the Whirlwind scores a hit with a blast weapon, the target cannot fire Overwatch, cannot be set to defend, and fights last. Given that the Whirlwind launchers have 72 inches range and can ignore line of sight, the potential of this is huge. As a result, we have seen the Whirlwind regularly creep back into current Deathwatch meta lists focused on Dreadnought spam and Proteus kill teams. Moving on to the Sicaranarchus, which is a Forge World exclusive model. This one gained some popularity after the controversial Alex Harrison used one in his list at the London GT, ending up on 2nd place. Contrary to the Whirlwind we previously looked at, this one is actually taken for its Arcus multi-launcher, which has a very solid attack profile. 48 inches range, heavy 2d6, strength 6, -1 AP, damage 2, blast, and it can ignore line of sight. Along those same lines, we also have the Whirlwind Scorpius with a very similar attack profile on his Scorpius multi-launcher, which comes at 48 inches range, heavy 3d3, strength 6, -2 AP, damage 2. One word of warning here, the Scorpius did not get the Whirlwind keyword and as such cannot access the previously discussed suppression fire stratagem. Just like with the Arcus, you would use this one exclusively for its indirect fire, a mechanism that is seeing a rise in the meta once more. While either of these are certainly solid picks, purely from a beginner's perspective, I would put these pretty low on the shopping list, primarily due to availability, as well as both kill teams and dreadnoughts currently taking priority in terms of competitiveness. Moving on to the last unit for the competitive category, the Hellblaster Squad. For these I also released a detailed guide a while ago, the link is in the description. They can be included in a 40 skill team, and as a rule of thumb, I think that this is where they work best. Gaining OPSEC, getting access to specialisms, as well as potential ablative wounds from intercessors. However, the Hellblaster Squad has been making an appearance in competitive play, and I think it's worth considering if you cannot fit the intercessor's tax into a list and or don't want to pay for the specialism. Either way, just like with the Eradicators, it is a good idea to deploy them through the Teleportarium stratagem. With the most competitive picks out of the way, let's have a look at what I personally rate as the situational picks. While these currently don't make it into meta lists, I think they are playable enough that they don't ruin the effectiveness of a list in more casual play. Starting with the relatively new Gladiator tank, they come in 3 variants, to which we will get in just a moment. The main issue here is that vehicles aside from the dreadnoughts don't have the core keyword, which means most of the Deathwatch goodies used in dreadnought lists won't work on any vehicles beyond that. When investing into a Gladiator tank, I think it's sensible to pair it with a Tech Marine, and the tank gets some potential wound rerolls from chapter tactics, but that's about it. Getting back to the different variants, I think both the Valiant and the Reaper are playable, with only the Lancer being completely underwhelming. As a rule of thumb, I recommend taking all the upgrades when investing in these kinds of vehicles, as the points increase is very minimal when compared to the actual benefits. Pretty much the same can be said for the Repulsor and the Repulsor Executioner. In addition to their firepower, they can also transport some Primaris troops. Personally, I think that the Gladiators are better priced overall, and that Deathwatch has enough delivery systems as it is to go without these kinds of tank transport hybrids, but as I initially said, if you like the models, they are playable in more casual settings. Moving on to the last category, the ones best left at the Watch Fortress, unless you are of course going entirely for Rule of Cool. These are mostly overcosted units and or the ones that transition poorly into 9th edition in general. First, we have the Centurion Devastator Squad. Here we have a prime example of what I just mentioned. GW has slammed the nerf bat hard on these in 9th edition. They don't get core, and with that miss out on the majority of buffs. They are even excluded from Bolter Discipline, and to add insult to injury, once you realize that their base cost does not include any of their main weapons, it is very hard to justify taking these. What does work in Deathwatch, however, is the Assault variant, which I have covered in a separate video. The link is in the description. Moving on to the Firestrike servo turrets, freshly introduced in 9th edition. They are a bit of an oddball as far as I'm concerned. While their Tech Marine Gunner gives them a ballistic skill of 2+, they are quite fragile with only toughness 5, and combined with their slow movement of 3 inches and lack of an invul save, they are easy to take out. This is especially bad for the already costly Twin Last Talon variant with only 24 inches range. I could see some use of the Twin Accelerator autocannon at 48 inches range, but without the core keyword and no specific synergy with Deathwatch, I would much rather invest their points elsewhere. We then have the Thunderfire Cannon, which was omnipresent in the 8th edition for a while, but just like the previously covered Centurion Devastators, they have been hit hard into 9th edition, primarily losing both strength and AP on their main gun. At this point, I would much rather invest into the previously mentioned Sicaran Arcus for indirect fire, or take the Whirlwind for access to the now exclusive Suppression Fire stratagem. Next, we have the Land Raiders, which come in several variants. Even though they have received a points decrease in the Field Muniturum Mk2 a few months ago, they suffer from the 9th edition vehicle problem of not having core and not being very durable due to the lack of an invul save. In addition to this, when looking for a firstborn transport in the Deathwatch, it is far better to go for the Corvus Blackstar instead. We then have the Predator tanks, which I personally count among the most overlooked datasheets in the Space Marine Codex. They just don't do much for their points, as well as lacking core and access to an invul save. Just like with the other tanks, there is little Deathwatch can do to make them better. Along those same lines, further vehicle datasheets like the Vindicator, Laser Destroyer, Forge World exclusive like the Sicaran Battle Tank, the Omega, Punisher and Venator suffer from the exact same problems, and they have not made it into any successful competitive 9th edition lists. Before finishing up with this last category, 2 more datasheets that warrant a special note. The Hunter and the Stalker, which are particularly good against aircrafts. The former even made a surprise appearance at the recent Goonhammer Open UK, where once more Alex Harrison tried a new approach to countering the dominating flyers of AdMech and Orc lists. As it happens, I had just started working on this video the week that GW dropped the balanced data slate, and my comment for the original script pre-balance would have been as following. Personally, I would advise against investing into these for now. One surprise appearance to hard counter overperforming datasheets is far too little justification. If anything, I would expect an upcoming FAQ to address the matter of these flyers, which in result will put the hunters back on the shelf. And this is precisely what happened now with the release of the balanced data slate, capping flyers at 2 in addition to increasing the cost of some of the worst AdMech offenders. All in all, even though the Deathwatch is primarily centered around their iconic kill teams, and Dreadnoughts have proven to be the obvious go-to on top of that, there are still plenty of heavy support choices worth considering. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at the heavy support battlefield role and how these units currently perform in a Deathwatch army in 9th edition. From a competitive point of view, we have the Eradicators, Eliminators, Hellblasters, the Whirlwind and the Sicaran Arcus having made regular appearance in well-performing tournament lists. Eradicators, Eliminators and Hellblasters can also be taken as part of kill teams, though my general recommendation would be to take the Eradicators as a heavy support instead, while Hellblasters on the other hand can benefit a lot from being part of a kill team. For the Eliminators, it is pretty much a tie, with both options being great. Beyond that, the Ancient Whirlwind is primarily taken for its exclusive suppression fire stratagem, while the Sicaran Arcus and the Whirlwind Scorpius happen to have potent artillery weapons for indirect fire. As far as the rest of the datasheets goes, I personally think that both the Gladiators and Repulsors are playable, even though they struggle from general Space Marine vehicles problems in 9th edition outside of Dreadnoughts, such as not having gained the core keyword, and for Deathwatch in particular, not being able to make use of the Dominus Aegis relic. Nonetheless, if you like these models, they won't hold you back in more casual games as far as I'm concerned. Then lastly, we have a somewhat lengthy list of underperforming units, many of them being either vehicles and or Forge World exclusive models that just didn't get the keyword support needed to perform well in 9th edition. In some cases, like the Centurion Devastators or the Thunderfire Cannon, they even got specifically targeted with a series of nerfs. As a closing thought for this video, while these units may not be competitive, if you like some of the models and if you are playing in a casual enough environment, I don't mean to discourage you from including any of these choices. They are in my opinion simply not performing as well as they should in order to justify their points investment in a competitive setting. So that's it for the heavy support battlefield role in the Deathwatch. Which ones are your favorites and which ones are you leaving on the shelf? Have I missed anything important or did some injustice to a datasheet? Let me know in the comments. Finally, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. I do also have a Patreon page. If you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video. Give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.